too much appetite or too little appetite. Natural selection does everything, all of these things with trade-offs, with advantages and disadvantages on both sides. There's one idea evolutionary medicine has for doctors. It is that everything in the body is a trade-off. You think it's good to be tall? There are big disadvantages to being 7 feet tall. You get more cancer, you break more bones. How about being 4 feet tall? That's problematic too for many reasons. A medium height is about best. A medium weight is about best. Natural selection is stabilizing all of these things into some middle zone that has advantages and disadvantages, but not the extreme ones. But now we come to low mood. This is a harder question. It really doesn't seem very obvious at all that low mood could ever be. Why? Why feel down? Is there ever a situation in which feeling down and not wanting to do anything would possibly be useful? Let's ask the bigger question first. Why does motivation vary at all? Why not feel the same perky enthusiasm at all times, no matter what? But you should decrease your motivation when there's lower payoffs and increase it when there's greater payoffs. Picking raspberries is a great illustration. So every organism, not just humans, has to make decisions about how to get their food and do other things. And that decision has to be made by how long you stay at your current bush before you move to the next one. This slide is not as complicated as it seems. That part at the bottom where it says search time, that's how long it takes you to find a new raspberry bush. Once you find one, that curve starts off, and at first you get a lot of raspberries per minute. And then, as you keep going under feeding time, you get fewer and fewer per minute until you've gotten all the raspberries from a bush. You need to make a decision. How long do you stay at this bush before you move to the next one? So some people want to pick every single one in the bush. That's the green line, or the blue line. The blue line, you see the dotted line? That's how many raspberries you get. And the blue part from search time to feeding time is how the slope of that line is how many raspberries you get per minute. The red line is a different strategy. That individual finds a new bush and picks a few raspberries and then quickly goes looking for a new bush. That's not as good. That line is less steep. Can you see which line is best of all? The best line of all is that green line. That individual gets the most raspberries per minute. And you don't have to do calculus to do this, although Eric Charnov is a marvelous mathematical biologist who did the calculus. Because all organisms do this. When a ladybird beetle is feeding on an aphid, it has to decide how long should it take to suck the juices out of that aphid before it goes looking for another one. And if there are a lot of other aphids around, it goes quickly to the next one. If there aren't very many around, it spends a long time on each aphid. Every organism does this very well because the system gives them high motivation early on and lower motivation later, which shifts interest to other things when it's time. And our lives are like this, right? I mean, if I were to talk to you for 2 hours, it doesn't matter how interesting I would be. You would get bored because our attention span is not that long. So I'm not going to go that much longer. There are good times in life when you can find new things quickly, and you get a big payoff, you can find new things. That is a wonderful time in life. Projects work. You're finding lots of nuts on every tree you go to. If only life was like that all the time. This is what life is like sometimes. A long time to find something, a small payoff. The longer you keep doing that, the more calories you lose, because it's steady loss instead of gain. There are times when the costs are greater than the benefits for every available activity, in which case the best thing to do is nothing. And there's a motto for that kind of unpropitious situation. The motto for that kind of situation is, don't just do something, stand there. And I think of my relatives in Norway, living on the coast of the North Sea 1,000 years ago. And they tried to stay warm and have enough food, but it was tough. And I think some of those relatives were optimistic. And in the middle of February, they said, I don't care, you guys are all pessimists, I'm an optimist, I'm going to go out and find some food and more firewood and all the rest. And of course, a lot of them never came back, and their genes were lost. And the ones who kind of hunkered down and waited until spring, those are the genes that we have, which might explain why there's a lot of depression in some families. These are old ideas, very old ideas. This is William Blake in his illustration. And he says, if any could desire what he is incapable of possessing, despair must be his eternal lot. This is kind of a hard thing for we moderns. We want to have it all right now, quickly, but a lot of people find themselves trapped, pursuing an unreachable goal, in which case ordinary low mood tends to escalate into clinical depression. This is not my idea. Eric Klinger, there are dozens of psychologists who have written about the way that ordinary low mood shifts our attention to things that work, and how we tend to get stuck sometimes pursuing goals that we can't give up, and how that makes ordinary low mood escalate into depression. So this is the crucial question that my psychiatry residents tell me is the most useful thing I've ever taught them. The question is there something you're trying to do in life that seems so important you can't give it up, even though it seems that you'll never succeed? And sometimes, even when I've been with a patient for many sessions, I ask this question, and I suddenly learn that this person's been trying to get their spouse to have sex for the past 2 years, and the spouse won't. And they don't want to get a divorce. And they don't want to go having sex with somebody else. And they don't know what to do. Or they're trying to get their kid to get off drugs, and their kid won't talk to them. Or they're trying to get their boss to quit harassing them, and they don't want to leave it. Very often in life we get in these social traps where we're trying to do something and it's not very easy to get out of it. So some people say, Dr. Nesse says that, sometimes you should just give up. Yes, but it's not that easy. If people could give up easily on things, they would do it. It's always subtle, personal kinds of things. Kurt Lewin, really fond of the field of social psychology, he points out that everything, behavior and emotions, happens from a person in a situation. In psychiatry, we've been hugely emphasizing the person. Certain people think wrong, or they have bad brains, or something. The other half of the equation is the situation. And for most people with emotional problems, it's not just that they're a certain way or that they're a bad situation. It's some interaction between a sensitive person in a difficult situation. And an evolutionary plea, far from treating everybody the same, encourages us to try to analyze, for this particular person, why is this particular situation especially difficult? So how do we do that? In the rest of medicine, we do something called a review of systems. Your doctor has asked you on a routine examination, do you get short of breath? Do you have headaches? Is your breathing too fast? Do you get short of breath? Is your peeing okay? Is your digestion okay? And you wonder, why is the doctor asking you all this stuff? Well, this is reviewing all of the systems to see where there might be a problem. We need to do the same thing in psychiatry, except it's not these systems, it's social systems we need to examine. We need to review at least these 6 social systems. There are 6 things that everybody is striving for. These are the same things all animals are striving for, basically. Social position, friends, and respect. Occupation, and ways that other people value us to make money. Children and family and kin. Income and physical resources. Abilities and appearance, and love. And if only it were so simple that we just go get these things. But every bit of effort going towards one is effort that can't go towards another, which is why we lie awake nights trying to think of what to do. That's what we end up thinking about all night long, is how to allocate our effort. And we imagine there's some perfect way to make everything work out right now. Every time you put more effort into one thing, there's less effort for another thing. And that's just the way it is. And it's good to acknowledge that, instead of imagining that there's some magic perfect solution that will solve everything for us. Everybody probably knows about the APGAR score, which really simplified our measurement of babies being born, about how they're doing. And something like this for SOCIAL and a review of social systems, I think, can help us quite simply start looking more deeply at the situations of people's lives, instead of this god-awful simplistic term of stress. How much stress are you under? Come on, give me a break. You're stressed because your doctor told you had cancer, or you're stressed because your groceries weren't delivered? It shouldn't be just stress. It's such a generalization. One of my graduate students once took on a very bold project and decided to ask the question, is depression really one thing? Are the different symptoms for different reasons, just like the different symptoms of a cold? You have sniffles, you have a cough. What are the different symptoms there for different reasons? And he asked people who'd experienced a death what symptoms they had, and they had pain and crying and need for social support. He also asked patients who had failed at something what symptoms they had. They had fatigue and anhedonia, lack of feeling, and pessimism. The whole idea of summarizing all the symptoms of depression into one scale is really not sensible scientifically. We should be asking about all the separate symptoms and trying to understand each of them separately. So I've just said 2 emotions. They get all the attention. It's not fair for anxiety and depression to get all the attention. What about loneliness and envy and anger, jealousy, guilt, and grief? They're all problems that plague us. And I would love to see us be more systematic in our approach to emotions that people experience. So we're going to summarize quickly reasons for excessing of emotions. The smoke detector principle. They can be perfectly normal, but useless in that instance. Modern environments create a lot of situations that create useless emotions for us. Sensitization means that the useful thing of shifting how sensitive these systems are makes them intrinsically vulnerable to going off when they're not needed. And then there's a matter of brain pathology. What percentage of my patients do I think have some pursuing of unreachable goals for their depression? Only about half. The others, as far as I can tell, they've always been depressed, or they got it because of some infection, or some drug they're taking, or something else. I mean, I'm trying to get us away from this simplistic view of it's all in the brain, or it's all the genes, or it's all people's lives. No, we need to talk to people one by one and try to understand what's going on. So the utility of all of this is really what I just said. I'm not going to repeat it much, except we can really now, with this framework, start understanding individuals and their emotions one by one. And it also helps us to know more about what we're doing when we treat people. Some people imagine that antidepressants provide some missing substance. Well, that's not right. Antidepressants work by blocking a normal system that causes no mood, just like pain medications work by blocking the pain system. And antidepressants work by several different mechanisms for the same reason that pain drugs work by different mechanisms. Some of them block inflammation, some of them block how much it bothers us, some of them block neural transmission. Same thing for drugs that influence emotions. We're essentially mucking with and blocking these normal systems, and it's a good thing, because a lot of the times they're just making us miserable, and our first obligation as physicians is to relieve people's suffering whenever we can do that safely. This also means we have new ideas about where we can look for new drugs once we start taking this perspective, instead of assuming that everybody with low mood has something wrong with their brain. Other problems that we talk about in the books in great detail: eating disorders. There's a very specific reason why we're vulnerable to eating disorders. Addictions are an inevitable outgrowth of a learning system that works on chemicals. Sexual disorders, I kind of like that chapter. I'd like to go into it sometime, not tonight. It's good for our genes. Have you ever noticed that the coordination of male and sexual semen behavior is just not right? It's just not right. If men did longer or women were shorter, it'd be so much better. But that's not the way it's designed for good reasons. And then there's grief, which really is the price of love, and guilt, which makes moral behavior possible. And a whole other theme of this is to get us far away from simplistic selfish gene thinking to more sophisticated thinking about genes, and recognizing that people who have a capacity for guilt and grief and love have selective advantages for other people, because they're preferred by other people as partners, but not just sex partners, but as social partners. And this is the factor that shaped all of us to be so much different from other animals, so that we really can have real relationships where people trust us and we'll trust other people that are genuine friends, and they do things for us and we do things for them, even when there's no expected payoff. And isn't it wonderful? And there's no other species that does this. But the price of that is that we all care enormously about what other people think about us. And we constantly are wondering, did I do the wrong thing? Did I we're trying to please that person? So that social sensitivity that's so awful, I think it's also the key to how natural selection has shaped us all to be moral people who can be good friends. Bottom line here is this is not in any way opposed to ordinary psychiatry and the quest for trying to find brain abnormalities. That process must go on, and it will succeed with some disorders. But a genuine medical model in psychiatry is one that carefully separates symptoms from diseases and understands that a lot of symptoms are useless, even though they're normal. It also understands that, as in the rest of medicine, there are a lot of syndromes, like renal failure or heart failure, where you don't go looking for the one cause. You recognize the function of the whole system, and that many different things can make it go wrong. And many of the difficulties we're having in finding specific brain abnormalities for some of these syndromes might be because we're looking for something specific when it's more like heart failure or renal failure that can have many different causes. So that's a summary of some of the things in this book. The bottom line is extremely simple. Evolution is, or at least can be, useful for psychiatry. And I'll emphasize one more that, I'm not claiming to have proved hardly anything I've said tonight. I've given you a bunch of good ideas, some of which would require only $500,000 to test, which is pretty cheap when you consider how much has been spent looking for brain abnormalities. It's $20 billion, and we have not found any. I think that should go on just the way it is now. It will succeed. But I'd also like us to put all of this work in a proper evolutionary context, where we're trying to use our understanding of the normal emotions and normal behavior control mechanisms as the foundation for understanding abnormal ones, which is what the rest of medicine does. Thank you very much.